Vampire's Kiss is a 1988 black comedy horror film directed by Robert Bierman and written by Joseph Minion, starring Nicolas Cage and Jennifer Beals.
He was an ordinary guy.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Looking for an extraordinary love.
I'm Peter Love.
Rachel.
I brought this girl up to my place the other night.
It started with a kiss.
Really hot.
A very special kiss.
You wanted her very badly.
Yeah.
A kiss that could drive you mad.
I hate interrupted love affairs, don't you?
Yep.
It's affecting his work.
There you are. It's a horrible, horrible job. And you have to do it.
It's ruining his appetite.
My next appointment with you is Tuesday afternoon.
I'd like to make it sooner.
It's spoiling his sleep.
Sooner.
And don't think people haven't noticed.
Am I getting through to you? Over!
He is so eccentric.
My.
For Peter Lowe,
Oh, sooner.
that's just love
Love.
in the big city.
Yeah. Don't laugh.
I'm a professional. I don't lie.
I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire!
Nicolas Cage,
The tortures of the damned!
Maria Conchita Alonso,
Shoot. Do it or I'll fire you. Do you understand? Not the floor, Alva.
and Jennifer Beals.
You're so pathetic.
Vampire's Kiss.
Strange stuff. I'll never do that again. Jeez.
Diggy, 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 dun, 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 da, ba, 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 ba. Welcome back to the Cult of Films. I'm John, the host, and tonight I am joined by another fellow vampire, Mr. Jason Alt. Welcome back, sir.
Team Edward? Question mark? Is that the vampire?
I think so.
Look, I'm not doing a thing where I'm like, oh, let's not like Twilight so much. I'm gonna pretend I know. Listen, there's the werewolf was Jacob, right? That was Taylor Lautner, and then the other guy, that was Robert Pattinson, whom we like on this cast.
Right? Yeah.
So there you go. We're not doing it. We're not doing a bit. I didn't know the name.
Who really did get to rehabilitate their image pretty well, I think.
I think everybody got kind of a chance, which was good. You know, they got a paycheck for that, and it didn't define their careers, so good for them. Except Taylor Lautner, who looks like a hack and can't act, but that's nobody's fault, but Taylor Lautner's probably. That part's very important. Yeah.
Do we have special guests like Cloves of Garlic? I mean, we are in dangerous grounds here, but.
Oh, my eyes! My eyes!
I thought vampires would find this beer objectionable. It is a odd-side sweet potato souffle rye ale, and that doesn't sound good, but it's the best beer I've ever had in my life, I would say.
Holy shit, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. Triple barrel-aged imperial rye ale with sweet potato, cinnamon, nutmeg, and lactose, aged in rye whiskey, chocolate, rye whiskey, and rum barrels. A lot going on. It's a whole meal. This is a fantastic beer.
Good Lord. I have a Head Full of Dynamite, Fremont. It's a hazy IPA. They do one of these every year. It's like their fresh hop series. It's incredible stuff. I always love to do it. Nice, refreshing, hazy IPA.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of Interview with an Overactor?
Okay, so I'm with Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke says that Nicolas Cage is the greatest actor of our generation. I think he's underselling it slightly. I think Nicolas Cage is the greatest actor of all time.
Nick Cage, huh?
Nick Cage.
I feel like he would be your nightmare. Because in this movie especially, he was method in this.
No, yeah, but he doesn't act like acting's hard. He realizes that acting's a joke, and he treats it like a joke. And I think that's why so many people in Hollywood hate him. Because he's just like, whoa, and everyone's like, come on, man. We're trying to... Hollywood's got this thing where they're like, if everybody realizes how easy acting is, everyone will just drop what they're doing and move to LA to try to be an actor, and no one's going to alphabetize insurance forms for a living, right? So we need people to dig ditches, and that's why we make Daniel Day-Lewis, we give him a bunch of awards because he's like, I laid on a straw mattress and everyone called me Abraham Lincoln for 6 months. And they're like, that is what it takes to pretend to be Abraham Lincoln. When Nicolas Cage calmed down a little bit, they gave him a Best Acting Academy Award just for like being him a little bit. He's like, can you yell less because you're drunk? And he's like, oh, I'll try.
I'm like a prickly pear.
Oh my God.
I'm a prickly pear.
I think I'm ready for rice.
So Nicolas Cage does not take acting seriously, but he takes not taking acting seriously.
Right.
And that's what I like about him.
I don't know if he takes human seriously. I mean, the pedigree is definitely there. He's a Coppola. So good on him for just being different, because you're not going to be bored in a Nicolas Cage role. And I think that, especially in this movie, like, this is probably the most quotable, not only quotable Nick Cage film, but also, like, the mannerisms. This is where the big eyeballs, like, really came in, and the pointing and shit. Like, this had it all. Everyone thinks of, like, Wicker Man and Face Off.
Bad Lieutenant, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this was kind of like, he was exactly this character in Bad Lieutenant. It was all the same stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in this movie, it's like, here's a guy losing his mind. And then in every other Nicolas Cage movie, it's just like, here's a guy who has lost his mind, and we give him $35 million to make this movie, and he spent it all on dinosaur bones. So, right? Like,
yeah.
He basically just is this character a lot of times later, and, like, I'm fine with it.
Initially, the role went to Dennis Quaid, which he left the project to go star in Inner Space, directed by Joe Dante. And then Nick Cage was kind of the second choice, and he even quit because his handlers or his manager or whatever is just like, listen, you just came off a Moonstruck. You're kind of like on a meteoric rise. Let's try to ride this out. You don't need to do this weird, obscure, shitty pseudo-vampire movie. And so he left for a little bit, but then, there was something about the character. And he even says, I just watched some interviews with him. He said that Vampire's Kiss was the best experience that he's ever had making a movie. And
sure.
he just got to do this crazy, surrealist kind of performance. And I got kicked out of 2 rooms last night because I was rewatching it, and first I pissed off my wife, and she told me to leave, and so I went in the other room, and I was laughing so hard in the living room that my daughter, like, came out of her room. She's like, you gotta go. So I had to watch this on my phone in the kitchen because I just couldn't stop laughing.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Huh? That's all you have to do.
Very good. You know your alphabet.
I never misspelled anything. Not once, not one time.
But you got to give it to him because he's playing it straight, as straight as he can, and that's the absurdity of it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, right? Like, this was real early in his career. Like, he kind of had a little bit of cachet. Because, like, he did Peggy Sue Got Married, Raising Arizona, Moonstruck, then this. So he kind of had a running start, It wasn't this movie's fault that he made Never on Tuesday.
Right.
Right? I don't see this as a Dennis Quaid movie. I could see Randy Quaid in the role, maybe.
Yeah.
Because Nicolas Cage pretends to be as crazy as Randy Quaid is in real life, so I could see that maybe.
Yeah, he just needs a chair and a long Santa beard, and he would fit right into this for the sequel.
So, John, what's this movie actually about?
Oh, my God. You have yuppie, kind of douchey Nick Cage doing a very bizarre Keanu Reeves, kind of more like a Phil Hartman, but 5 years old style voice. Like, this dialect is so weird, and I've heard that he was kind of going for Transylvanian, but it just kind of sounded like Surfer Dude, and he's in New York.
I was a little drunk. Plus, I was horny.
You have this guy. He's kind of a man of the night, right? He goes out and he goes to these like jazz bars, and he brings people home. And this one particular night, he has another unexpected guest. A bat comes down, and he kicks out the half-naked girl so he could tangle with his bat, which he tells his shrink later that it just made him feel really horny. That's the thing. Like, this is the most tonally confusing film because, I watched the trailer because I'm like, what were they really going for? Were they going for a comedy or were they going for a horror? And if you look at the trailer, it shows both. It shows it's trying to do both. And I don't know if it fails or exceeds at either. It just is. And it's just one of the most confounding films of all time. He meets up with this other girl, Jennifer Beals, and then he may or may not become a vampire.
If you like Bret Easton Ellis's book, American Psycho, and if you like the movie they made out of it, this movie basically is the inspiration for both that movie and that book. Cage's performance in this movie was Christian Bale's sort of reference. Like this in a Tom Cruise interview, I think, was like what Bale kind of tried to channel for when Patrick Bateman loses touch with reality. So Vampire's Kiss is an indictment of 80s yuppie culture. And, Ellis was, inspired by sort of, instead of being like the vampire movie, he went with a slasher route with it. But this is just some yuppie that kind of, is just, he loses touch with reality a little bit. And like, he doesn't know if he's becoming a vampire. It's not clear how much of what he's perceiving, if anything, really happens to him. And I think they were a lot more ambiguous with that in American Psycho. Like, they show him thinking he's talking to his shrink, but he's really just standing on a sidewalk. Like, they basically show the guy's nuts.
And that's a great scene. That's like a scene that I actually kind of take seriously. Right? It's just, he's like acting his ass off. And they plopped him right in the middle of just like downtown New York. He was literally running at homeless people going, I'm a vampire, and like just scaring them. And they just let him go. And he just, was fucking wrecking sets and eating cockroaches. They're like, hey, why don't you, let's do something really shocking. Why don't you eat a raw egg? And so he's like, no, I'm just going to eat this cockroach. And they're like, but why?
Because Nicolas fucking Cage. Oh. Good for him, man.
Right? It seems like everyone else at work kind of either accepts how eccentric he is, although they comment on it. Like he has like 20 different like secretaries, right? But only one is he really like leaning on. Alva ramping up the tension and stuff on this one poor secretary that she has to find these files or whatever for whatever reason. Not for whatever reason, she's the lowest one on the totem pole. So, he couldn't imagine a worse job to give to someone, and she has to do it.
I couldn't think of a more horrible job if I wanted to. And you have to do it. You have to, or I'll fire you. Do you understand?
But, he's literally chasing after her through the hallways at his workplace, like into the women's bathroom, and everyone else is just like, whatever.
Did you notice Nicolas Cage's older brother Mark is in the movie?
I did not.
Yeah, I also caught a few. I was like, is that David Hyde Pierce? And I caught John Michael Higgins in the movie also. So
I caught him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking for David Hyde Pierce. What scene was he in?
He was in the movie theater. He was credited as theater guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was searching for him because, you go through the cast list, and Jennifer Beals was pretty good in this. That's a tall order to kind of keep up or just try to match that crazy ass intensity. But at one point I'm like, when she's doing the initial turn or like biting his neck, I'm like, oh God, like don't show nudity for this film, honey. And then like you see the giant pasty that's covering her actual boob twice.
It was huge. Yeah.
They used the same footage.
Well, I mean, good for her. She's like, I'm not going to show everything in the movie Flashdance, and that literally has Flash in the title, so good luck get me to strip for this.
Yeah. $2 million budget. It only made $725,000 in the box office. Obviously, critics hated it, except for, there was a few film festivals that actually took it kind of seriously, and he was up for awards. You said he might have actually even pulled one off, right?
Oh, he won Best Actor in the Catalonian Film Festival in I guess Catalan probably, right? Did he fly to like the coast of Spain? I don't know. And he was nominated for an Independent Spirit Award because I got spirit, baby. I got it coming on my ass.
Yeah, the critics called this a scorched earth performance. That's like, it was, you know, he just got on there to just completely just tear everything apart. It had no business being 103 minutes long either. I think there was definitely at least 13 minutes of fat that could have been cut out of this.
I thought the pacing was just fine, you know, because like the guy's losing his mind. I think you need to kind of show like the long taxi cab ride. I thought was a little rough, but like the fact that taxi cab ride pissed him off so much, I think you needed to piss the audience off a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's believable that he just starts screaming at her because he spent $50 bringing her back to the office to look for a document that may or may not be there.
And it just goes so dark. Like a lot of this, like in a different movie, the gags would be a little bit more lighthearted, or at least have the veneer of being a little bit more lighthearted. Like in, Revenge of the Nerds, there's definitely sexual assault, but it has that veneer of wholesomeness to it. Where this one, he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna rape you, and so it's just like. He's saying...
Well, it wasn't just him tormenting his secretary, though. It was the whole office culture where they, like, laughed at the fact that he followed her into the bathroom.
Yeah.
And she threatened to pull a gun. And, like, she's just like, that's just a thing I put up with at this office. And everyone was just, like, giving him a hard time about how funny it was. Just, like, I get that that's an indictment of, like, yuppie culture. But at the same time, it was sort of like, this doesn't read well these days.
Yeah.
You know, it's just sort of like, it's like how much of this was how it was really like to work in an office as a woman in the 80s and how much is exaggeration. It's kind of hard to know, but like,
sure.
I had to remind myself that like, no, nobody's the hero in this. Like they're trying to make him look like a piece of garbage on purpose. And it was just a little awkward, you know, like you say Revenge of the Nerds where you're like, that's a funny movie. And you go back and you're like, oh man, yeah, they straight drilled holes in the wall of their dorm and put cameras in there, huh? Like it was a different time when everyone's like, oh, those wacky nerds and
boys will be boys. Yeah.
Cameras. My God, people go to jail for that now, and rightfully so. So we can't just be like 80s will be 80s, but at the same time, it was a little rough, even though you know that you're supposed to be. It's satirizing how awful those places were to work for women in the 80s.
And I think what made this so, I don't know, cultish, basically, is because it just had those extreme moments of both sides. You know, you're laughing your ass off at him half the time, but then, like, that one scene where he actually is just, like, all in, and he is, like, doing the weird, like, literal, like, Nosferatu walk through a crowded club, and then he just finds this one like random girl and he's just like playing that role. It's like, no, that's a serious horror moment. The character's laughing at him and then we're doing the same thing until it's not funny anymore, until this shit's like actually really happening. And you think of like a real serial killer in that instance, because usually, you know, you have like Ted Bundy or something, they're known to be these charismatic people and kind of disarmingly that way. So that was just like, it's a really disturbing and creepy scene, how slow everything happens, how she's just like pretty much laughing until it's just like completely too late. And that scene is like played complete, like that could be in a regular horror film. So it was those just like tentpole moments of just crazy batshitness where it just makes it unforgettable. And then those moments of actual horror, literally going in to buy plastic teeth and shit. Like it almost makes you feel bad because you're like, am I laughing at a handicapped person, or is he just this, or we're like, you know, yuppie office managers at this time just really that into themselves that, you know, I
think everyone was kind of coked out, so like
Too late! Too late! Too late! Too late! It's too late, Alma! It's all too late, Alma! Come here! Come here, Alma!
when he was running around screaming, everyone just thought it was hysterical. Everybody in that club thought it was kind of funny. You know, everyone outside thought it was like he was a big joke because they were just so used to seeing people wearing expensive suits completely coked out of their brains, you know? So there's like, oh, it's just some yuppie asshole.
Other guy at the end with Rachel. So when he went up to her and he like confronts her after she kind of like demasculates him and starts walking away, and then she has that other guy with her, and then he's like, yeah, Rachel, and she's like, oh, hi, you're so and so. Are you okay? Is that legitimately a moment of like that's the real people, or is that what
that is what happened, because he thought he saw her in a different dress and then he didn't see her. It was just a coincidence she was at that club that night.
Yeah.
When I think he really realized he was breaking with reality, because he thought he just saw her earlier wearing something different. So when he saw her again, without the teeth and without the red dress she was wearing, and you could tell he didn't know what the hell was going on. That was sort of, I think, when he realized he'd completely lost his shit and started looking for someone to kill him.
Yeah. It's a sociopath, a portrayal of a sociopath, because he just kept moving the goalposts of things that were going to satisfy him and make him feel normal. Where he made up that whole instance in his head where he's talking to the shrink, and then she introduces him to the perfect person, and even in his mind he's breaking up with her by the time he gets home. It's really easy to just kind of throw this movie away as an internet meme vehicle, but there is some shit in here. It's like Joseph Minion, the person that wrote it, like, he's no slouch. He wrote After Hours.
He wrote After Hours, yeah.
Yeah,
that
so
was 83, I think. So
yeah.
A few years earlier, yeah.
And he wrote this as what was going on in his life at the moment. He was going through the same kind of breakup, and so it was so dark and so close to home that's why he reached out to British filmmaker Robert Bierman, and he kind of turned over the reins that way, because there's just some weird darkness to this movie.
Yeah, this wasn't really like anything else he wrote, and like he never really wrote anything like this again, which is too bad.
I don't think he wrote anything else again, did he?
I mean, nothing major, right?
Yeah.
Like,
this kind of he had like a 1-2 punch, and it was more like a 1.5.
I mean, maybe you saw Motorram. I sure didn't.
Sure, you watched this when you were younger, and then rewatching it now. Like I had a completely different experience. When I watched it when I was younger, I knew it was wacky, but I kind of it just felt like a movie to me. Like, I'm like, oh yeah. I'm just watching a movie with some funny parts and some horror parts or whatever. But then watching it now, it's just like, how the fuck did this thing get made? What was your reaction to watching it now as opposed to like years ago?
Because I think it's clear there was a lot of critiquing of Reaganomics going on among like the film community in the late 80s. Mm-hmm. So this. Watching it as with someone with an eye for subtext as an adult, you sort of get what's going on. This is a little more allegorical. As a kid, not a kid, I wasn't a kid watching this, but like as a, late teens, early 20s, watching this, I didn't grab as much of that. So it just seemed like a weird, over-the-top Nicolas Cage movie that we used to watch at parties, But watching it now, I think you get a little bit more about... You can see how this was a great starting point for someone to write a good second draft of it, which became American Psycho, which, again, the first time I saw American Psycho, it wasn't clear it was a dark comedy.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a really disjointed and confusing horror movie. Did Paul Allen really die? Was he really that guy everybody thought he was at the office? You didn't really get that. They were satirizing the fact that all the guys all look the same. He did kill Paul Allen, but someone who looked like him was spotted alive. So it's I think watching it now, I didn't have a different experience with respect to like how much I enjoyed it. I just feel like I got the reason they made it. It wasn't just a movie where they spent $2 million to see how many faces Nicolas Cage could make, right? Like, there was a reason for everything in it, and I feel like I got it now. I'm not like a genius for grabbing like the most obvious imagery. It's just whatever. Like when you're 18, you don't really get what's going on necessarily.
It's hard. It's still a confounding movie to analyze, because the whole time I'm talking myself into taking it more seriously, but also just like, no, this is a gag. and then something weird happens. I'm like, that's a little bit more. It just feels more competent a lot of the times than what it lets itself out. And then he literally, starts crying and says, boo-hoo! And I'm like, damn it, you got me again. Every time I feel like I can figure this thing out, or what they were going for at least. Because, whatever. Nick Cage is just like, fuck it. I'm just going to do a thing. And he did the thing. And who was going to tell him no? He was the biggest actor in here. Jennifer Beals was riding pretty high at this point, but it wasn't her movie. It was his movie. And this was the case of probably an inexperienced filmmaker and a writer that didn't really want to deal with it anymore. Just going like, hey, we have a movie star and he wants to do whatever. Let's just turn the camera. It was more like Jackass than it was like a regular, or it was kind of like more Borat, I guess. Right? Like, because they were doing shit in the street. They were, messing with bums and picking up pigeons and shit. Like, all that was, they literally just like set a tripod out and said go, and just watched him go, and he did, and it was probably some of the most entertaining parts of the film. So I don't know. Do you think this holds up beyond like the memes that it has become?
Yeah, man, I really do. Especially if you like some of the stuff that you could tell was kind of based on this. I think this is the movie that taught Nicolas Cage to go for it, and I think it was the movie that taught people, like, if you were going to satirize the like Reagan 80s, you can't go too over the top. You just can't. Like, this is like the basis for a lot of stuff that came after. It's real good, and I think this hangs as a movie. Like, I don't think anybody that sees this on our recommendations is gonna be like, it was boring, No, it's not boring.
No,
it's not just an excuse for Nicolas Cage to chew the scenery either, though.
Yeah,
like, there's a point. So yeah, I'm glad I rewatched it. I think it holds up.
Yeah. I don't know who to recommend this for. I mean, you could recommend this for David Lynch fans and complete stoners. Like, it's and everything in between, I think.
It's a good 80s movie. It's like the RoboCop of vampire films.
It is quite Verhoeven. Yeah, that's my attempted take at Vampire's Kiss. I'm like, hey, I picked this one. I'm like, this is gonna be a slam dunk. We're just gonna do a bunch of gags and Nick Cage impressions, and then I watched it again last night, and I'm like, fuck, like this is a real scrub checker as far as movie critiques go. But yeah, tell us what you think in the comments. Are we reading too much into it, or cool for memes? Let us know downstairs. Hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel. Check us out on all your favorite podcasting sites as well, on iTunes, Spotify. Leave us comments there. Rate us. Tell everyone we're talking about films. You can follow this on Twitter at The Cult of Films. Jason Eugene Alt, where can everyone find you, sir?
I'm at Jason E. Alt on the Twitter, and I've got a pinned tweet at the top of my page that links to all the other projects I work on.
And I am at John the Host. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.